Now my card is probably locked. They think that it has been stolen. The automatic program has blocked my card. Wonderful. Aloha and welcome back to Wanderous, a very special edition of Wanderous. This is part 2 of my eye surgery story. Now I'm going to try to make this one a bit more concise because that first part went longer than I thought it would. You know, I've had a long history of eye experiences in my life, and I thought it was appropriate, and I thought it'd be helpful for you to understand the backstory of how it's really felt like a crutch. Needing glasses, needing contact lenses, you know, dealing with contact lenses sometimes falling out of my eye. I had a contact lens blow out of my eye once on a bicycle, and somehow I found it on the gravel on the side of the road. Contact lenses are rather expensive for how long they last anyway. And it was to the point where I wanted to save this contact lens, and I put it in some solution. And I think I ended up putting it back in my eye after it had fallen onto these small rocks. I was like, it's probably okay. And I soaked it in solution like overnight. And it was fine. But it's been a saga. It's been a saga of dealing with eye stuff. As I said, since I was about 10 years old. So I felt like this saga would finally come to an end in Delhi, in northern India, where I was staying for a little while until I would go up to Dharamsala, which is a story I'll tell on the show later, and eventually come back to Delhi and fly nonstop from Delhi to Chicago, which is a heck of a flight, by the way. But I want to cut to the good part this time. I mean, the good part for me, the next thing that was really significant to me was initially very frustrating because I arrived at the clinic and they checked my eyes one more time and they're like, okay, we're going to get you in. And they said, okay, here's the paperwork. Here's all the stuff. The doctor is extremely professional. He talks me through all of this. In fact, there was something I forgot to mention last time, which is when I was calling people and doing research in Delhi, one of the things that impressed me about Visual Aid Center was how generous this doctor was with his time on the phone, even answering a couple questions. I think we spoke for at least 30 minutes, which was it was a very good, for the lack of a better word, it was a very good vibe. It was a very good vibe, and they were very attentive and caring and professional. That was my impression very, very early on. And the only snag was when I went to pay, my card was rejected. And I knew very well that I had the money in my account. I could pull up. I actually went to show them the website. I was like, I have this money. I have this money. And I felt frustrated, to be honest, with my credit union because I had spoken to them the night before. But of course, there was a 10.5-hour difference. 10.5, because India has to have that half hour in there. I guess they really want the sun to be directly overhead at noon, but it's a little bit weird. 10.5-hour difference between Wisconsin and New Delhi. So I couldn't call them, but I could call the card service line. They wouldn't pick up. I was having a terrible time. I had spoken to them the night before, which was their morning, to say that this was going to happen and could they please make sure that the charge would go through. You know, there's all of these programs which usually do their job. There's all these programs with credit cards and debit cards where they're looking for fraud. They're looking for something that's out of the ordinary. But I had already told my bank that I was in India, I had a travel notification. We can do a podcast about that sometime if people are interested. I was talking about this with somebody last week. We were talking about how it works. And the other snag, without getting too personal, is that there was fraud on my other card. So I only had one card, one working card in India. And the replacement was at that moment when my card was rejected in the clinic. It was on its way. The replacement card was probably in an airplane at that moment coming toward me, but would not arrive in Dharamsala for another week and a half because India is very far from America, of course. So this was very stressful to me. And I said, well, maybe I could try just going to an ATM. And someone from the clinic, I couldn't figure out exactly who it was because this person didn't speak much English. He drove me, I think it was a security guard. He drove me maybe a half kilometer down the road to an ATM, which I thanked him profusely for. And I go into the ATM. By the way, SBI, State Bank of India, it's just white letters, blue background, SBI. Probably the best ATM you're going to use in India because they typically have no fees depending on your card. SBI is, it's the state bank and it's quite reliable. The ATMs are good. I've never had a problem actually, unless my credit union is freaking out. So I go in and the ATM rejects my card and says there's a problem with the issuer. Of course, the issuer means your bank. This is a difficult morning for me now. And I just shake my head, and the guy takes me back to the clinic, and I don't know what I'm going to do. Now, my card is probably locked. They think that it has been stolen. The automatic program has blocked my card. Wonderful. Now I have no way of getting to any of my money. Isn't that fun? And I have maybe 1,000 rupees in my wallet, like the equivalent of $10 American, maybe, $12 American. Which 1,000 rupees in India it's a fair amount of money. To them, it's probably more like $30 or $40 because of the difference in how much people get paid per hour. Money conversions between countries are rather complicated when you're looking at the purchasing power and the power of your labor, but that's another conversation. So I come back in and I'm apologizing profusely. And around this time, I realize, wait, maybe my dad, maybe my dad can help me out here and I can just pay him back. So I call and my mom picks up, and my mom had been suffering from very chronic migraines off and on for about since the year 2000. Yeah. Because we went to Florida. So maybe I should just blame Florida for all of this. I'm joking. And she started we took a vacation to Florida, and that was around the time when the migraines started coming. So I would call her, and often she would be, without getting too personal, just resting and sleeping a lot. And so it was a nice surprise to get her on the phone. And she sounded great. She sounded like she'd slept well, that she wasn't in much pain, which was unusual. And it's late there, of course, 10.5-hour difference. And they're like, okay. Here's the number. And I write down the credit card number, my dad's credit card number, and the expiration date and all this thing. And I hand it to the front desk, and they're struggling. I quickly realize they've never tried to charge a procedure to a card that's not physically in their hand before. They've never typed the number into this, handheld point of sale machine, which you've probably seen these. They have them at restaurants often. They will bring this kind of chunky computer, this wireless card reader, called a POS, a point of sale, to your table, and you can just do the thing. And sometimes you'll sign the screen. There's many different types, but it's a basic POS little thing. And they had never typed someone's number into this machine before. Usually you put it in and it scans your, square, little rectangle chip on your card, which is pretty secure, and you get charged. So they can't figure it out. They call someone, they're trying. And, I talked to my mom briefly, and it was very lovely to hear her voice. My mom's voice is just lovely. And I go, well, I should probably go in and just like pray that this works out. And I get back in and they say, we trust you. Call your bank and you can pay in the follow-up. Go. You can pay in the follow-up appointment. Just go upstairs. They're just like, go. You're short on time. Go. Because this whole process, of course, took 45 minutes. Just screaming inwardly, not outwardly. I was just screaming at the entire monetary system on planet Earth. And I get up there and I'm quickly whisked in this room and I'm instantly in a small room that feels like almost like a tiny temple. And you come across tiny temples very often in India. There is no limitation on how small or large a temple can be, only that it is dedicated to some deity. But it's a room that connects to another room. And I see across from me this old man who is the founder of Visual Aid Center. It's Dr. Vipin. And he's smiling, and this guy has an aura. Very peaceful, very palpable in the room. And I sit down, he's like, oh, you ready? And he tells me some things, okay, we're going, everything is fine. Do you want some tea? And I say, oh, and he gives me tea and we speak. And I believe we talked about His Holiness Dalai Lama. And I said, I saw your picture of Dalai Lama and I think that's wonderful. I'm actually going to Dharamsala, which is where Dalai Lama lives. I'm going there later in the month. He said, oh, that's wonderful. We've been very honored to serve him. And they sort of, okay, it's time. And they whisk me into the next room, and I put these covers over my shoes. I think maybe they even had me take my shoe. No, there were covers. There were covers over my shoes. And they had me take my glasses off. Now everything is blurry. And I see through the blur, I see the white machine. And there's a thing through the window, the next room. This is the third room now. And they say, oh, come in. And they actually put a net over my hair, and they come, and everything's blurry. So I'm not getting that much information on some level, not visual information anyway. And the main doctor is there, and an assistant's there, and I lie down. They direct me to lie down, and I've seen this machine. I've seen videos of this, right? And they say, oh, put these eye drops. They put these eye drops in my eyes, or maybe they did it right before I went into the room. It was a very, like, things moved very quickly. Once I said goodbye to Dr. Vipin, things just moved quickly. It was like I had jumped into an invisible current that was just propelling me forward into some new reality. That's how it felt. And I lie down, and they put these two things over my eyes, and they cover the rest of my face with this like white covering, and they make one opening in one side. It's for I'm trying to remember which eye they did first, but they lower this machine and they say, okay, and they lower this bubble thing down, and it's this dark, it looks like a big black eye coming down to my eye. And I feel it press against my eye, but it doesn't feel uncomfortable because the numbing drops are working. I learned later that there was actually a suction effect that I could not have moved my eye. I could not have looked up or down or left or right, even if I wanted to. And they say, all right. And they remind me of the procedure, right? And they say, you must be very still. This is going to take about 10 seconds. And we're going to count down for you. And my heart is beating a bit because I'm just thinking, oh my God, I don't know what this is going to be like. I don't know. Now, they told me it won't be painful. But I was thinking, like, what if the power goes out? You know, I'm a writer. I can think of a million ways something can go wrong if I let my mind go there. The assistant was standing near and I said, hey, would it be okay if I held your hand? And she's like, of course, it's totally fine. And she holds my hand as I'm lying on this bed connected to this very futuristic machine. And I see a green dot. Now, again, this is just one eye so far. I think this was my right eye first. Yeah. I see this green dot, and they say, keep your eye on the green dot. And when the green dot disappears, then the laser is working. And I'll try to recall as much as I can about this because my mind was racing, and it was stressful. It was stressful because I was making it stressful. I mean, it was a weird experience. And I didn't know what my life would be like after this. There was no going back. I mean, this was the metaphor of crossing the Rubicon River. There was no going back after this. This is a irreversible surgery. And the cornea of my eye was about to get shot with a relatively low power, and Vipin said this, relatively low power laser setting. They actually set it as low as they could to be as gentle on the eye as possible while still creating the lenticule, which is that bit they pull out. So they're counting down and they say, okay, 1, 2, 3. And I realized that the light was gone. The green light had disappeared right when they had started counting. And to my surprise, I didn't see a laser at all. I was looking into a dark gray lens, but I saw nothing. I was really surprised by this. I thought I would see, like a red flash, but the laser frequency itself is of a frequency it's not visible light. At least I didn't see anything. And I'm trying to, they're like, just don't move your head. And they're counting down. They're counting, I think they were counting up, 9, 10. And then they raise the bubble up again. And they put something over the eye. They take something off. Then, suddenly this one eye is surprised, you could say. Everything's really cloudy. Everything's like a white haze all of a sudden. And then I feel this motion to the side of my eye, and I know what they're doing. And this is really the scariest bit. I think this is the scariest bit about the whole procedure, is that they go into that tiny little incision with, little sterilized, essentially metal claws, but it's done by hand. And they root around a bit in your eyeball. The front, the cornea, the front, they're not like going, they're not going into the vitreous. They're not going into the ball. This is just the layer, just that clear part, just the cornea in front. And they pull out, and I don't see this, of course, but I just feel they're moving, and I feel the pressure of like, okay, there's something. It was the weirdest feeling of my life. It was not painful, but it was one of the strangest sensations. And it feels like they did that one pretty quickly. And weird feeling. Everything's cloudy. I can't see any shapes, just light. Then they put something over that eye. I say, great. Okay, we're doing the other eye. I'm 90% sure it was the left eye that we did second. So then they do the same thing. They put this clear thing over the other eye. The laser comes down. They say, watch the green dot. Watch. And the machine must have been just like calibrating perfectly for exactly where my eye was and doing all this intense calculation. And then the green dot disappears and they start counting. And again, I see nothing. It's like a dark gray fuzz, a haze. 5, 4, 3, 2. And I thought I looked up a bit at that moment. And I was like, oh God, I hope I didn't just ruin my left eye. And they pull the machine up. And the same thing. I go in and I feel pressure on what feels like on the surface of my eye, but I know it's a little under the surface because they've made this lenticule. And this time, it feels like it takes them 20 seconds, the longest 20 seconds of my life. And I start to think thoughts. I start to think thoughts that are not constructive. What if they can't find it? What if there's a mistake? What if I need emergency surgery? What if there's bleeding? I don't know. But I felt fine. It was just my thoughts racing. Finally, they finish. I asked later, hey, did the left eye take significantly longer, or was it just me? And the doctor said, well, first of all, most of us are right-handed, so it's the angle's a little more challenging, but no, I don't recall your left eye taking longer. It took about the same amount of time. And I trust him. My sense of, when my mind is racing, my perception of time isn't great. So maybe it took 1 second longer, 2 seconds longer. I think it's probably a little bit of both. And they take this thing off. There's like a harness or something. Not a harness, but there was like a thing, hard to describe, a fastener or something over my eye. And they say, okay, it looks good. You can go wait in the other room. And I sit up and I can discern shapes. I can discern the table better than before. I can discern, and I feel like I have what we might say is 20/60 vision. Definitely not good enough to drive, but everything is coated with this white haze, which is very normal. You're essentially doing constructive trauma to the eye. And I feel just disoriented, as you would. And they help me walk over, and I sit. And I remember sitting down, and Dr. Vipin was in the staging room, which still felt like a prayer room to me. And maybe they did pray there sometimes. There was definitely a vibe in that room. And he said, oh, how are you doing? And he's blurry. My heart's still probably racing. I felt like I was in an altered state of consciousness. Definitely. Probably because of fight or flight response. I was just like, this is a strange experience. And he gives me tea, and I'm sipping tea, and everything's, everything is still pretty blurry, but I can see where people are. I can't quite see their expressions quite clearly yet. And after we drink tea and all this, I'm really glad. It seems like it went well. I said, yes. This is very normal. The blurriness is very normal. And they lead me in, and they explained to me earlier that the best thing to do after the Smile Pro procedure, which is a type of LASIK, apparently, the best thing to do after the Smile Pro procedure is to take a nap, for at least like 2, 3, maybe even 4 hours. I'm sure there's many reasons for that, but probably related to blood pressure and keeping the eye, letting the eye relax as much as possible and adapt to this change in shape. And I wait on the couch. I'm very disoriented, and I'm kind of tired, but I'm also kind of wired from the adrenaline of the experience. And I sort of just sit there for a while, just seeing how gradually I can see a bit better, just a bit better. And the doctor tells me that he'd like me to come back in the afternoon. And I was somewhat of a distance from them. And I didn't really want to do that. I didn't really want to come back after 2 hours, which felt like 2 hours. It was more like 4 hours. But it would have been this whole project to go back and forth. And I was catching Uber rides. And they told me that I should not use the Uber bike, which I really like because you bypass all of this traffic. They said, well, it's not really a good idea. They even said I shouldn't go into a rickshaw or a tuk-tuk, if you know what that is, which is like a tiny car, but it's kind of open to the air. They said, when you go back home, you definitely need to take a car. We need to protect your eyes. And they said it's very important that you put sunglasses on. And we had tested the day before. I had brought some sunglasses that I had bought in Bali, and they wanted to make sure they were polarized because, of course, the first 24 hours, even the first week after this procedure, you're on a regimen, as I would soon find out. There's a very prescriptive thing you need to do. And I asked them, do you think there's a place I could lie down here? And they may have mentioned it. They may have offered it in passing. I think they did a bit before. They said, oh, you can lie down on this. And I said, do you think there's a quieter place I can lie down? And they said, absolutely. And they opened up an office where nobody was inside. And there was a couch. And I just lay there, I don't even know, for like 2 hours. But I couldn't fall asleep. But it felt good to rest my eyes. And, they turned the lights down. And it became very quiet. It became very quiet in the afternoon. And I got the impression that most of the procedures were done in the morning. So I lay down and time kind of got wobbly, but I couldn't sleep. And I had some question for the doctor. I forget what it was. So around this point of the experience, I really lost track of time. And I looked at my phone and it was coming up to 5 o'clock somehow, even though I hadn't slept. Or maybe I did, but it didn't feel like I'd slept at all. And I got up and I ended up talking with someone. And the great thing about Visual Aid Center, there's a lot of great things, but one of the great things is they just keep feeding you tea and biscuits. And you can get the tea. If you're lactose intolerant like me, they are happy to make it without milk, which I really appreciate. Sometimes it's difficult to find tea without milk in India because sometimes they'll make it, which I would learn in Dharamsala, they make it together with the milk sometimes. So I was really grateful that I could get tea that wouldn't cause me to have a lot of digestion problems. So I'm just having this tea, and he's like, "Oh, okay, we can check up on you now." And it's now suddenly it's the afternoon, and I'm just totally have lost track of time, which happens. And they look at it and they go, "Yeah, you look good. You look good. We'll do a follow-up appointment on Tuesday because we're closed on Monday, and that should be fine." They're basically closed on Monday. And he tells me, "So you got this drop you want to put in 4 times a day. This drop you want to put in 3 times a day." And he wrote down all the instructions. There were 3 different medications, 3 different types of drops I was putting in my eye. I'm getting all these instructions, and things are still blurry. There's still a white haze over everything. But it was just enough. It was getting better, and it was just enough where I could function. And they bid me farewell, and I take an Uber back to where I was staying, which wasn't expensive. I think it was less than $2, or maybe it was $2 American. The Uber in India is incredibly cheap. It's wild. Probably because the dollar is really strong right now. So at that point, I was pretty tired. And I think I rested for a few hours, had some food. And when I went to bed that night, I had to put, this is the other funny thing about this procedure, they give you these plastic domes, like little domes, and you tape it over your face. They give you tape because you cannot scratch your eyes, at least for the first couple nights. I think it's about 2 or 3 nights after the procedure. You don't want to put any pressure on your eyes. You have to be very gentle, of course. So I have this whole thing, but I sleep with an eye mask. So the eye cones had holes in them to let light through. So I had to tape over the holes to try to block out as much light because I have really good night vision, which was a concern. Because my pupils get pretty big, and there were concerns that I came across online that if your pupils get really big, sometimes the machine can't make a lenticule big enough, the circle to be wide enough to cover how big your pupils would get. That was one of the things that I asked them during the original consultation. They said, nope, you're still in normal range. It was a big relief to hear that, let me tell you. So I go to sleep, and I was sleeping because it's India. I was sleeping on a single, or maybe it was a double-sized mattress on the floor. That's a different story. I'll tell you that story another time. It was fine. I was very lucky to be staying where I was staying, actually. But it was on the floor, and my eyes were starting to feel scratchy in a weird way, like vague discomfort, because the medication that they had given me to numb the eyes was, of course, wearing off. But I slept pretty well, and I woke up the next morning, and I peel this tape off my face. I peel this stuff off my face, and I can mostly see. And it was a weird experience, not having to reach around for my glasses or reach around for contacts. But things are still hazy. I'm definitely not all the way there yet. I took it easy that whole day. I had bought enough food the day before to avoid leaving the house on Monday, which worked out really well. And I ended up getting food poisoning. I don't know why. I don't know what happened. The day after my follow-up appointment, I ended up getting food poisoning later. That's right. It wasn't yet. I didn't get food poisoning yet, but I was about to get food poisoning, which is real fun. And I just took it easy. I took it easy, and I listened to podcast episodes of things. It definitely felt like I was recovering from something. And in the follow-up appointment, they looked at everything again. And this time, to my relief, my card worked. I ended up calling my bank like that night. It was Monday night. I called them and I'm like, hey, I called the 24-hour number and I was like, hey, like, this is supposed to be a 24-hour number. Why didn't you pick up? And apparently I called during a tricky time. I called at like 1 or 2 in the morning, Central Time. And sometimes they just don't have enough people. There's not a lot of people working that shift. And I learned that call center actually has like 100 people in it. Could have fooled me, because usually I don't get the best phone support with them. But the woman was very helpful and saw the declined charge and put a temporary whitelist on the clinic, I guess. So I get back there and they asked me if I would be up for doing a video. Now, I'd already seen their YouTube channel, and they have somewhat of a following. But I was like, great, I'm happy to help because you guys did such a nice job. And my vision was really, really improved from the day before. The second day was much better. The white haze was basically gone, but there was just, it wasn't quite 20/20 or 6/6 vision yet, which was very normal, at least in certain contexts. It's hard to describe. It would kind of come in and out, So I'm like, yeah, I'm happy to take a video. Like, great, we'll do that after. I go into the room and they have the Snell chart or whatever it's called, and they test my vision. They say, excellent. You actually have 6/5 vision. The 6/5 vision is better than 6/6. It's basically the equivalent of like 20/15 vision. And so there's 2 ways of saying the same thing. 20/20 is the same as saying 6/6 vision. Depends on what country you're in. And I realized, like, wow, I can read these small letters across the room. Wow. And it's because they put in eye drops. They put in eye drops into my eyes, good eye drops, right before. And I realized that my main challenge, and this has been the case, would be when my eyes were dry, that's when the vision gets wonky. That's when the vision's not super sharp. So he says, well, everything looks really good. You're doing really well. Go wait, and then we can, take a video if you're open to that, and let me know if you have any questions. So I go out and pretty pleased. I did a video review, which I should see if it's online, and I feel like I nailed it in the first take, and I don't always do that. Usually with video, I've got to do it again, but it was really starting to hit me like, wow, I think I can let my guard down. I think it worked. I think this was a good thing, because there was still that going, oh, is this going to stabilize? Are my eyes going to be really fatigued? And it was working. It was working. It felt like it was working out. So I did a review for them, and then my card worked. I went and I paid, and thank goodness my card worked. And we scheduled a follow-up appointment for the following week after my visit to Agra, because I had planned this the whole time. I was like, well, I want to be productive with my week, being where I'm going to be. And a fun fact, New Delhi is, I think it's about, I want to say it's like 3.5 hours drive. Yeah, 3.5 hour, maybe it's 4.5 to Agra, where the most famous, or at least most visited monument in India is, which is, of course, the Taj Mahal, the most famous mausoleum in the world. And I'll save that story for another time, but I went down to Agra for 2 nights, ended up being 2 nights, which was enough. And it's great experience. And I got back to Delhi, did the follow-up, and things looked good. And they gave me, I had been doing the droplets 3 times a day. It was very prescriptive, after 3 days, I can go down to twice a day for some of these. They gave me artificial tears, which really helped to use those as needed. And I noticed, and let me tell you, the first 3-4 days, 5 days even after that, my eyes felt rough. My eyes were not scratchy, but it's hard to describe. It was a sensation I had never felt before or since. It was weird. That's all I can say. And gradually, every day, I just felt more and more normal. Yeah, the week follow-up was good. Everything went well. And I asked them, do I need to keep putting these cones over my eyes? Because I had the green domes over my eye, not cones, but domes. And they're like, oh, no. After 3 nights, you don't have to do that again. I kept using it because I really wanted to be careful. I didn't want to damage my eyes scratching at night, which I didn't really ever do that, but because they were feeling strange. One of the things that was tricky, though, because they would put the eye drops in me, especially the day of the procedure. I want to remember this. This was something I just remembered, is the eye drops would leave a little bit of a residue on my tear ducts, and I would go to, they said, don't touch your eye, right? It was very much don't touch your eye. You've been using antibiotic, because I was putting an antibiotic and a steroid eye drop to reduce inflammation and something else. And it was very there was very specific things I was doing at specific times. And I would get my knuckle and try to clean out my tear duct with my knuckle and stuff like that. And they saw me do it once, and they practically yelled at me because they really want to, they want to make sure nothing gets infected. And I was like, well, I washed my hands. And no. You need to use, and they give me a tissue, and I'm gingerly, and I'm like, yeah, but there's it's paper tissue. I don't need paper to get, So it was very, the first day was stressful because when you're using eye drops a lot, you'll have this dry, you'll have powder can end up even below your eyelid, which happened. And you have to be careful about that if you're thinking of doing this. That first day is the first 24 hours after just adapting is probably it's the only real tricky part. Yeah. Now, YMMV, your mileage may vary, but that was a tough thing for me. Was, and taking a shower. Like when they said you really don't want to take a shower, you definitely don't want to get your face wet anywhere around your eyes for the next week. You want to be very careful. And that was one of the questions that I had when I did a follow-up. Is like, hey, it's been a week. Like, can I? And like, oh no, you can shower normally now, but just you don't want to go swimming in that first week after. You want to be really careful. So when the days after the procedure, I would angle things and put my head under the shower spigot. I wasn't even using the shower. In India, there are a lot of like spigots right below the shower. Even though it's not a bathtub, there will still be a faucet or a spigot right under it with separate controls. And gradually, day by day, the discomfort faded, and I didn't have to use it was nice to not having to use the eye covers at night anymore. They cautioned me against using the eye mask because they said we don't want any risk of particles. I was like, ugh. And I washed it in the washing machine. And in the follow-up appointment a week later, they said, okay, you can probably use the eye mask now, but you should be careful. Because I had been using an eye mask for, I don't know, at least 5 years at night. It's really, that's a game changer, by the way. That's one of my travel tips, definitely, is having an eye mask, because you're not going to be able to control the sources of light around you at all times. It's much better to control your own sphere, your own sphere around you. So that's basically the story. It was such a strange relief and delight to get to tour the Taj Mahal and actually Agra Fort, which controversial take, actually more fun than Taj Mahal. I mean, Taj Mahal is more beautiful, but Agra Fort has these little passageways and stuff. And to be in the heat, although it wasn't that bad, but to be in the heat of India and to be able to just, not to be able to just be somewhere and not have this countdown timer in the back of my head for how much longer can I wear these contact lenses before they start to feel really uncomfortable. That was something I realized through this process, was there had always been in the back of my mind this countdown timer or this subroutine or whatever you want to call it. Because if I were to keep contact lenses on for more than, even more than 8 hours, even more than 8 dang hours in some cases, I would feel so dry. It'd be so uncomfortable. I've had situations where I would take them out, put other ones in, but then you got to make sure that your fingers are clean. You have to do your diligence and have to have solution to clean it. And even then, if you put brand new ones in, it's not a guarantee. You might still feel discomfort because the surface of your cornea is dry and doesn't want a piece of plastic, essentially, a piece of plastic over it. Definitely way better than the glass they would do in decades past, but still, there's a reason why they're trying to make contact lenses that are more breathable, because it does make a difference. But having this procedure done is absolutely night and day. And I realized in the coming weeks that all of a sudden, like, my peripheral vision, I had peripheral vision that I'd never had before. I didn't even realize that certain things could be in focus. One of the funny things I realized weeks later was my aim. Like, this is such a funny it's such a silly anecdote, but like, I noticed that when I threw things into a trash bin, my accuracy was much better. I mean, 3 times at least more accurate in terms of getting something actually into the trash can. That's a funny example, but little things you don't realize when you've been dealing with what is essentially a disability, that you have to have corrective lenses to be able to see like a normal human, and to be able to have access to essentially a cure to just remove a little bit of tissue. I think it ended up being, I don't know, like a few dozen micrometers has been remarkable. Now, there are days still. Now, so it's been, like I said, it's been about 7 weeks. There are days where my eyes are kind of dry and they get tired, especially when I'm in front of my computer. And that was to be expected. They warned me about that. And what really helps is just having like quality artificial tears. When I moisten my eyes, boom, I'm back to at least 20/20 vision. And they warned me it can take 3 months or slightly longer to totally stabilize, because your vision system is very complex, and it's interesting reading about the studies that they've done, and the studies comparing Smile Pro to Contura, which is another procedure. There's all these procedures, and there's like more basic like PRK LASIK, which is the old one, and the best outcomes have been associated with Smile. So I felt really, really lucky that I was able to get the best one. I don't usually give myself the best one. I usually give myself like the middle range of whatever, because I'm trying to save money. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, I spend X amount of dollars on contact lenses and contact lens solution. 30 something ounces of contact lens solution could be $6. That adds up. That adds up over time. And I looked at it and I thought, this will eventually pay for itself. And he told me, like, you will have good distance for the rest of your life. You will have presbyopia. I might be mispronouncing that, because everybody gets presbyopia, because your lens, it's unavoidable. The lens of your eye just gets a bit less flexible when you get older. And he said, to prevent that, having a very healthy diet, which you have, your diet will help a lot. Making sure you rest your eyes, using like UV lenses and glasses helps. Reducing your exposure to ultraviolet is a good thing. And even even using those blue blocker glasses can help. Blue blockers, they have blue blocker sunglasses you just wear when you're doing a lot of tech stuff. Now, the nice thing is all my devices shift orange at night anyway, so not as necessary. But if you're doing like older technology, that's a different thing. So I feel really mostly relieved that everything went smooth. And, it's so funny. I still have these moments where I'll go to touch my glasses or I'll go to adjust something just because it's ingrained in my muscle memory for 20 years. I'll have just, it's still weird to be able to like massage my face, massage my temples with nothing in the way. To not have that countdown timer, like I said, for how long my contact lens has been in. To not have to worry about, like, I can see myself when I take a shower now. Maybe that's what I'll leave you with, is when you're a high myope, you don't really rely on your vision when you're taking a shower. It's not helpful. Not like you really need to like see a bunch of stuff when you're washing yourself, because you're going to do it by feel anyway. But even the experience of taking a shower is different, because just dealing with water, being in tropical places like I do, he said, breaking grammar rules. Being in tropical places is a different experience. And you can sweat your face off, and guess what? You don't need to worry about smudges on your lenses that are going to obfuscate. I had a small doorway into my kitchen when I lived in Bali, and my depth perception I don't know why this was, but like, it's like there was like, maybe it was the astigmatism. I hit the side of my glasses going through that door. It was a narrow doorway. Like there was some bit being dropped in the stack, we could say, of like depth perception in that situation. And I knocked my glasses off my face. I'm alone in my home. And I go through a doorway and knock my glasses off, fly off my face. In fact, it happened once where the whole arm of my glasses popped off. Now I had glued it back on. That's the funny thing about it now. Because as we'll get to, I had an accident when I was in Japan, which was pretty intense, and broke my glasses. I thought I'd glued them adequately. You know, it was a kind of break where you can put the super glue in and it fit. The key fit into the keyhole kind of situation. And broke my glasses going through a doorway because my depth perception to the right side of my face was not quite right. I'd smack. You know, you see things get hectic, especially when travel. So to not have to think about a thing on my face is a very freeing feeling. So if you have questions about this that I haven't touched on, you can ask in the comments. But that's my story. I really want to thank Visual Aid Center. This probably won't be a public podcast, at least not for a while, because I want to give a lot of value to my supporters, even in a difficult stage, even in the difficult stages or even in the flowing stages. And that's just life. Things just come and go and flow. And that's my story, though. And I just have a lot of gratitude. They've been extremely attentive and responded on WhatsApp and have a wonderful facility. And it's a pretty all-inclusive package as well. And I believe they even allow me I can go back whenever I want for just a little checkup, and it's included, which is very kind of them. It's an interesting environment. I could do a whole podcast about like that building and the environment and how it's very spontaneous at moments. And when the doctor's available, it happens. You know, I guess that's sort of how India works. And then you're there, and then you have tea, and then okay, we'll come back in a few minutes. We've already done this test. We need to do another one. And then you're talking to someone, like there'll be like completely unscheduled downtime where a receptionist or even like another doctor will just be like on break, and you'll talk, and you can get answers to questions. Incidentally, it's a very almost synchronistic environment where things just kind of click together, but it has a very interesting rhythm, actually, that I was still kind of wrapping my head around before I left. But yeah, that's the story. Please let me know if you have any questions about that. And yeah, I still have not swam as of this recording. I still have not swam since I've done this. I haven't really gotten much water in my eyes, and there are days where they're tired when I use stuff up close still. And like I said, it's been 7 weeks. I might do a follow-up episode if I have something to report. But I imagine most likely it's going to be, I won't need the artificial tears after 3 months. It's gotten better each week. Yeah. And of course, the other benefit of this is weight. Because I'm a nomad, because I travel a lot, I don't need to bring contact lens solution. I don't need to bring pairs of contacts. I don't need to bring glasses or glasses cases. It's there's so many things, especially in the tropical environment. It's so lovely not to have to worry about lenses on your face in any way. And I'm just very grateful for that. And my vision is better than, especially when I put the artificial tears in, it's better than contacts. I feel it's weird to go from having, essentially, like I said, some kind of disability, not the kind of disability that you would think of. I'm not going to say I am disabled. I wouldn't have said that wearing my myopia glasses or whatever. But to go to not having a disability and going like, this is what normal is. This is what most people get to experience. Now, I have lost my microvision that I mentioned earlier, where I could see individual, because you can't have both, unfortunately. But can I read business cards? Fine. Yeah. Like can I use my phone? Fine. The first week after, that was kind of tough, using stuff up close. And now the eyes have adjusted, and I have a real range, a range that is like a normal range, like I was saying. It's like, oh, this is what it is to have 20/20 vision. I haven't had that probably since I was 8 or 9. And I don't even remember it that clearly. What I do remember was the first time I got glasses. And I know they overcorrected me because everything looked flat. It was a flat piece of paper. I remember that it was, I don't know what was going on there, but like every distant object looked like it was on a board. Like it had no depth around it. And it was maybe just my eyes adjusting to having a lens in front of them for the first time, but it was such a weird, there was no nuance. It was like it's hard to describe. It looked like it was a piece of paper, but at a distance. The tree looked like it was a large piece of paper, but it was at a distance. I don't know if that makes sense. It was, yeah. So I like to recommend Smile Pro, and I like to recommend lasers. I vote for lasers. And that's the end of this very special 2-part series, the shortest that a series can be, but this was something that I wanted to share with you all, especially the people supporting me over on Patreon. Once again, a big mahalo nui loa. If you don't know, that's Hawaiian for thank you very much. It was interesting reliving that whole experience. Also, I have more shows coming up, so please, if you haven't already, follow me on Spotify. There are links in the show notes to that. Show notes are always at patreon.com/HelloCrusoe, patreon.com/ the word hello, HELLOCRUSOE, Crusoe, like Robinson Crusoe, Hello Crusoe. You can also find me at Hello Crusoe pretty much everywhere. I've been having some more fun on Threads lately. But when you listen to this, who knows what could be available. But I just want to thank you so much for listening. And I'm looking forward to resuming my saga, really, of how I got to Nepal. I have so much I'm going to share with you. I have so many fun stories, especially things in Istanbul that happened before Nepal. So thanks again, and thanks to everyone who's been supporting this work on Patreon. If you are not aware, you can support my work on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can follow for free, which I recommend. If you don't have $5 a month, you can always get these shows for free. Most of them are free. Some of them are only for $10 a month level, but 90% of these podcasts are free. But if you join for $5, you actually get all 3 volumes of 10,000 Hours in Paradise, which is something, it's over 20 hours of me narrating my highly rated, the book has over 450 ratings on Amazon now. And at the second level, the inner circle level, that's only $10 a month. You actually get photos and bonus video backstage stuff from this show that I don't release publicly. And on the highest level, the New Frontier, you actually get very personal episodes from the show that I will never release publicly. And you also get access to the commentary edition of Truth Beyond the Sky. That's a tropical sci-fi audiobook. You get tons of stuff. You get all ebook versions of all the books I've released. And oh my God, that you can look at it. The whole list of bonuses is on patreon.com/HelloCrusoe. But for people who like audiobooks, I would recommend that you check out the lower tier, because it's a much better deal than buying the Hawaii audiobook on Audible. And the Hawaii audiobook 10,000 Hours in Paradise is very much in a similar tone that this show is in. It's the true story of what happened when I moved to the Big Island. I ended up helping rewrite someone's book. I did a Vipassana retreat. I fell in love, went through heartbreak. A hurricane hit the island for the first time in over 100 years. And then a lava flow almost cut me off where I couldn't even leave the island. And it chronicles why I left the island. And it's just a lot of fun. It's that one, like I said, that first volume has over 450. I checked today, it's like 462 positive ratings on Amazon. It's an over 4.5 star average, or 4.1, I think. But it's really, people really love that book. And that audiobook is available for people at $5 a month, and you can cancel it anytime. Okay, that's my pitch. I think it's a lot of value for what you're paying. You can always just find those on Audible and on Apple Books as well. And every single dollar goes to paying for things like health insurance when I'm in Asia, and food and lodging, and having equipment so I can do podcasts like this. I'm an independent author. I'm an independent artist. And I really appreciate, sometimes people even donate a couple bucks. And I just really, really appreciate when people support the work or even just leave a comment. I love hearing from you. So I will hold gratitude for all the beautiful things coming, and I'll see you next time.